All right. Okay. Looks like we're live again. We had a little technical glitch there, but it was quickly resolved because we are technical tech geniuses. So
yes, geniuses.
Yeah, we're in safe hands here. So look, welcome to another LinkedIn event. This is in this series. This is LinkedIn event number 3. All right. So we've been alternating between topics such as dealing with difficult people, and then the other big one is how to conduct tough conversations with those difficult people. So today we're going to continue on with the difficult people theme, but we're giving it a little bit of a twist, and we're breaking because Mark has identified 52 different types of difficult people. And he's given them some memorable titles, and so rather than just laboriously go through 52, you go through each one of the 50 categories individually. Mark's broken them down, and so today he's going to handle just a handful of them. Now, just before we get them, by the way, I don't need to introduce Mark. He's become famous in his own lunchtime.
Famous, yes, that's it, famous.
Yes, within his sphere of influence. So the theme today, yes, we're talking about difficult people, but but the more specific theme is people who don't pull their weight. And I dare say, you've worked in a workplace, you're continuing to work in a workplace, or out there in the community, at home. You may be able to identify with some of these difficult people types, and it revolves around people who don't pull their weight. So, Mark, you, I think, are ready to.
Well, let's see how clever I am. So I'm going to start. I'm going to forge ahead. Okay.
So let's. You got your slideshow there. Ready to go, Mark?
Yes, I do, and let's just make sure now that I am. How's that? Are we ready to go?
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, let's if it's okay with you, I'll just simply forge ahead, and you can interrupt at any time you like. Okay, let's go.
Just one thing. Look, if you can, if you've got questions or anything like that about any of the content Mark is covering today, please just type your questions in, and we'll deal with them. So this little part of it will last for what, 30 minutes, something like that, Mark?
Look, I think yes. As you know, LinkedIn gives you these times of half an hour, so we've chosen an hour, but people will be pleased to know that a maximum of 40 minutes. Let's aim for that.
Put my hat on. Yeah, okay, we'll aim for that, including questions, all right? So
sure, okay, well, I'll forge ahead then. Okay, let's go. Okay, well, I will talk quickly, and I will forge ahead with plenty of slides, because slides are probably better than looking at my face. But before we get into this, just remember this is general information, and everyone really is very, very different. You might be talking about your teenage son, you might be talking about your community group where you've got a problem, or it could be work, up, down, or sideways. So one of the things I'm really keen on is what I call real life scenarios. So in a chat like this, we don't do them because I'm giving you my examples. But if we were running a coaching session or a workshop, I love working on what I call real life scenarios. Your stuff. I've got 1,000 case studies and examples I've collected from everywhere, but it's better if we work on your thing so you can walk away with material you can actually use. And when it comes to developing skills, I use something called real life rehearsals and agent provocateur role plays, because you really do need to develop your skills. I want at the end of a workshop people to walk away and be able to implement the strategies immediately. And the way to do that is through these advanced behavior rehearsal techniques. So, yes, as Kim said, I've documented 52 types. So I went a bit I got a bit annoyed once decades ago when I read all these books on, the 10 types of difficult people, and I thought, well, these people just haven't been out very much, because there's a lot more than that. And I started asking people, have you met someone who's difficult? And they told me, and I started documenting them, and I got to 52 and I stopped because that's the number of weeks in a year, cards in a pack, and I thought that was enough. So you might have some others, but I'll run through them really quickly. So this is the group we're going to talk about today. Every picture is a type of difficult person. So the group one is, pardon me, don't pull their weight. And look, I didn't know what names to call these people, so you might have better names for these groups. There's a group I call have an exaggerated view of their importance. Everyone from the rule breaker to people who really do think that they're the boss, even when they're not the boss. There's a bunch of people who hinder work, progress and productivity in the workplace. Right down in the bottom right-hand corner there, the fellow with his finger up is what I call the yes addict. And they really do hinder work, progress and productivity if all they ever say is yes. But let's up the ante to some people who sabotage and undermine a little bit. Up on the top left of my screen anyway, when I'm facing it, is the agreement breaker. And boy, oh boy, when they're making an agreement with you, they look like that, but after they've broken it, oh, is that right? Is that what you meant? We have the people who belittle, persecute and intimidate. We're up the ante again here to people who manipulate one way or another. Maybe not the best term for the group, but there's another group, let's face it, they're just aggressive. Not necessarily yelling and screaming at you, but they are aggressive in one way or another. So let's get into it. I have a method of dealing with every type of difficult person. There's some principles behind all this, but I have 3 steps, and one is nailing the violation. I don't know why, but this step seems to be overlooked, glossed over, or not even thought about. You need to tailor the strategies because every situation is really different, and I have a group of strategies for you. And you need to personalise your approach, because the way I can say things and do things to someone at work, someone in my family, is different to the way you might want to do it or feel comfortable doing. So you need to personalise your own approach. So let's look at this group of delightful people and who don't pull their weight. And the first person we have here is what I call, what have I done there? I've done something silly. The slacker. And this person just simply doesn't do enough work. And I rather than have more than 52 types, I started to get some subtypes. And we have the escape artist who just gets involved in too many minor and irrelevant jobs. Now, sometimes these people are fantastic. They're the one that always organise the end-of-year function. They always organise the cake for someone's birthday. But I have worked with someone who really half of every day they were doing something which really was irrelevant. The shirker, I'm not going to read through all of these. You can read them yourself if you like. But there are people who, they'll do particular parts of their jobs, but when it comes to writing up their report, I don't like doing that, it's boring. Well, I'm sorry, it is actually a part of the project. And we have excuse makers as well. We have people who are simply lazy, and you know these people, they only work and help out and contribute if they've actually been specifically asked or directed to do so. I don't know about you, but I've been in workplaces where you'll say at a staff meeting, can someone help us out with this? Or, look, Julie is new. She'd really like a bit of help working out the software program. It's the same people who put up their hands. Same ones are time and time again. And there is a profiteer. They only show interest and make an effort when they can personally benefit. They will not help out. When I was a school teacher, there were people who would never help out with anything, but hang on, this might be good for my promotion. Suddenly they're helping out. We have a maverick, the people who just simply do their own thing. There's a work plan, there's a business plan, but they're doing something slightly different to that, and you've got to pull them back in line. and a problem creator. I don't know if you have too many of these, but I have worked with people who that always seem to be the one who creates a problem around the place, whether it be not putting petrol back in the car or filling it up, or leaving the photocopier in a mess and jammed up for someone else to fix up. Do we still have photocopiers these days, Kim? I don't know. And some will actually damage property. Yeah, photocopiers were good things. So let's do it, because I do want to really forge ahead here if people have questions. Nailing the violation. I have worked for a union and defended people, and I've also been on the other side of it where I've taken someone through a disciplinary process. I've seen both sides of this, and where you can win or lose is whether you do or not nail the violation. People miss out on this. So what is it? First of all, you need to use facts to say what has actually happened. And the facts are what I call what the camera has seen. That's all. What we want to do quite often when we're dealing with someone who doesn't pull their weight is tell them things like they were rude, they were stupid, arrogant, outrageous, they've let everyone down. I've heard people say you're not a team player. Now, all these things are simply not facts. They're our interpretations. They're things that we decide and label behaviours with these sorts of terms. So we need to stick with just the facts. Bill came to work at 9:15 a.m. We are supposed to all be here by 9 a.m. and he was told yesterday, or reminded yesterday, to be here at 9 a.m. It's now 9:15. Just the facts. What you want to say is that he's let the team down again. He's been unfair. Sure. So the first thing in nailing the violation is just what were the facts. And you need to explain what the problem is. So to your teenage son, who you have told 10 times this week, maybe 1,000, not 1,000,000 perhaps, but feels like it, to tidy up his room by Thursday 5 p.m. And the fact of the matter is you've told him 3 times, you've come home at 5 p.m, his room's not tidy. You need to explain now what the problem is. Now, different workplaces, homes, personal lives, the problem is different. Sometimes they broke a rule. We have a rule in this workplace that swearing is not on. We have a rule in this place, whatever. Maybe they broke an agreement. You agreed to be at work at. You agreed you would have that report done by. Maybe they did not follow a directive. Now, the directive is something, people often don't like that word, but the reality is that if you're the manager and you say, Peter and Julie, I want you to clean that part of the floor. Say you're working in a club and you're in charge of a large floor and there's everything there from the bar to snooker tables or whatever. You tell someone to do something and they haven't done it, they have not followed a directive. And the last one is tricky. A standard of behaviour. We all have personal standards of behaviour, and I was working with someone a while ago whose standard behaviour was you don't swear. There was no rule written down about this. As she said, it's common sense, and her idea of swearing was blaspheming. So you need to be really careful exactly what you're talking about. Now, here's the thing. When you're dealing with someone who doesn't pull their weight, you often know in your heart that it seems to you that one person really churns out the work and the other person doesn't, but there is no rule. It's easy when it comes to a bricklayer, because with a bricklayer say, no, I expect the person to lay so many bricks per day and build a wall or whatever. You've got some measure. But often in workplaces, it's not so clear exactly what the rule is. You just know in your heart. Well, this is where it all starts, because you will fall down dealing with someone who doesn't pull their weight if you can't work out what the rule or the standard of behaviour is. I expect it takes 2 hours for 2 people to clean all the tables in this part of the leagues club. If you don't have a system like that, it's no good knowing in your heart that they're not pulling their weight. So I can help you with that. Please drop me a line if you want to. I have a fun activity where you can work out what all these little standards of behaviour and rules are, and you can get people involved in it, and it can take anywhere between 10 minutes and hours, but there is a little activity we can do to work out what your actual standards of behaviour are. So what you really want, of course, is the strategies, but I cannot emphasise enough, nail the violation, because at a disciplinary meeting you can look very foolish if you can't pin down exactly what the problem is. So the slacker, we'll just talk about the slacker, the person who just really does not do enough work. We'll just keep them in mind, shall we? I have a list of strategies. I'm going to knock through them because some are not relevant. You have to tailor them to suit your position. There's not a safety issue here when someone's just not doing enough work. You can leave people to it. You can just say, oh, well, so what? Well, most of us don't want to do that. We want to do something about it. Sometimes you can forge ahead when you're dealing with these people, but once again, this is about when you have to get information from people, or if you disagree with someone, how to tell them. We're moving up to something which now you can actually start to use. So you have to tailor these. You can change their world. Maybe you can fill gaps in their knowledge. There are people around who don't do enough work because they just don't know how to use the software. Now, as hard as I am on difficult people, you've got to learn to cut people a bit of slack. Some people really just don't have the knowledge and skills to do what you want. Check it out. There's ways of checking it out. You can change their physical or social environment. You won't believe this, but I actually, well, I hope you believe it, when I was working in an organisation, I actually moved 2 adults away from each other like I was still teaching high school. I moved them. I changed their physical and social environment. I moved them away from each other because they sort of interfered with each other all the time. I could have had a chat to them. I just simply moved them. You can change people's physical or social environment. Sometimes people don't have resources to do their job properly. And you can sometimes charm people into lifting their game. If you want to know the details of these, just drop me a line. Now, once you've nailed the violation with someone who's not pulling their weight, it might be time for you to step up to the plate and what I call lay it on the line. Be straight. I know there's a lot of writing in this, so you don't have to read it. I'll just talk to it. Sometimes you need to tell them what they've done or not done and why it's unacceptable. John, you were asked to complete those 3 reports by 3 p.m. today. It's now 5 p.m. and they're not done. That's the facts. That's it. Not you've let me down again. Oh, I thought I could rely on you. Oh, you're a terrible person. The facts are boring and dull, as someone said to me once. Explain why it's a problem. I need those reports done by 3 p.m. because I need to take them to a manager's meeting tonight, whatever it is. Now, 2 ways you can go here. I did this very well. Well, that sounds terrible. I feel as though I did it very well when I was dealing with someone in an organisation. I asked them a question. Is there something I need to know? It's a powerful question. Is there something I need to know? There are other questions you can ask. But sometimes when someone doesn't pull their weight, they will tell you, I hate this work. I don't understand what to do. I tried to do it, but beware of the but, but ask a question because it helps the person work with you to solve the problem. It can work. But sometimes you need to go a bit further, and it's the fewer technique you'll see down there, FEWER. Sometimes you need to say to somebody, here's the facts. The reports were supposed to be done by whatever, explain why it's a problem. What I want you to do now is make sure that those reports are on my desk by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Tell them what you want. Be clear. It might be obvious to you, or you think it's obvious to them, but make sure you actually tell them what you want and explain why it's a good thing. If you can do that for me, it'll be terrific. That'll be great because I need to take them to the manager's meeting at 10 a.m. or whatever it happens to be. There's times for giving rewards and penalties. Well, this stage, you're only telling them what they are. If you can do that for me, terrific. Son, if you can tidy up your room by 6 p.m. before the visitors arrive, that'll be terrific. I'll be happy. You know, you're not handing out money to people in the office. The reward is sometimes purely you'll be happy. But there are penalties, and don't be scared of telling someone what the penalty is. If you fail to do your work again, I will be taking it further, or whatever it happens to be. Every workplace has different types of counselling sessions, disciplinary sessions, whatever it happens to be. Here's a little aside for you. Don't lump it on HR. They've got enough to do. You're the manager now, the supervisor or the leader. It's your job to step up to the plate. I won't talk about these today because I don't think they're particularly useful for this particular one, problem of the slacker. But just remember, there's lots of strategies that you can use, although I put them under some headings. I do have a special technique for responding to a put down. Now, people. This is where we fall down with giving people, dealing with people who have not pulled their weight. If they repeat it, you have to work out when you are going to give them a penalty. That penalty can be all different types. It depends on, it really depends on you and your workplace. We're getting a bit of interference there, Kim. I don't know what that is, but I'll leave that in your hands. So I'm rushing through this really quickly because I'm hoping people will have some questions. But here's another one. Here's another strategy, which is ending the relationship. Only you can work out when it is time to do this. But I was working with someone in a community group last year where I feel as though I gave them, we were both organising an event, a community event, and they really did not pull their weight. I got to a stage after months and months of tearing my hair out where I actually had to say, this is not working. I no longer want to be a part of this group. Now that's heavy, but this is the job for us as managers, leaders and supervisors to sometimes actually do that. If you can no longer guarantee that you will do the work that has to be done by a certain time, I will be unable to give you any more contracts. I don't know what it might be. I don't want to get involved in the law here, but really, sometimes you do have to end the relationship. Now, we just of these different groups, we looked at the slacker. How would you approach that to someone who is lazy, someone who does not put their hand up and help out? Now, I worked in an organisation, I'm almost told you where it was, where someone did work. They did their work. What they didn't do was help out anybody else. They kept things to themselves. I call it being lazy. I want people to put their hand up in a team and say, yes, I can help the new person, Julie, with this or with whatever it happens to be. So what would you do if the lazy person? Let's go back to, and I'm going to skip back really quickly now. Here goes.
Excuse me, Mark?
Yes?
Yeah, just a quick interruption there. I got logged out of the call on StreamYard here. So, and then when I was able to get back in again, the questions have disappeared. So yes, there have been questions, and I will pick them up before you finish. I'll pick them up over direct on LinkedIn before you finish, and then I'll copy and paste them to a document, and then I'll just feed the questions.
Okay, good. I'm going right back here to nail the violation, and if I don't know what interruption we've had, then people might have not seen what I was presenting. So I'm happy to talk to anyone later about that. But no matter who the person is, you need to nail that violation, because if you don't get that right, you will potentially make a fool of yourself. Someone is going to ask you, when you say to someone, oh, they were lazy, they were this, they were that, oh, they're not a team player, someone is going to ask you, and reasonably so, what did they actually do? So remember, facts. It's what the camera saw. There are things that are not facts. You need to explain what the problem is. So I'm going to jump ahead now. I do have a technique to help you work out what the rules should be. So safety first, changing their world, laying it on the line. Let's just have a look at this. The fewer technique is something you sometimes need to use when you're dealing with someone who does not pull their weight. You need to tell them what the facts are. John, you were supposed to do this amount of work, and if you don't know what the amount of work is and you can't measure it, you're in trouble, by a certain time today. Now, someone a while ago is a supervisor in a leagues club, and yes, they're now in charge of a large floor, and they have some people who are better at cleaning tables than others and putting glasses away. You need to have some measure of what is an acceptable number of glasses or number of tables to complete in a certain amount of time. You need to tell them what you want. Susan, I want you to make sure that you have cleaned 20 tables within the next whatever the time happens to be. Now, these conversations are tricky. I understand that, and I'll just skip ahead because I want to do something, because I want to make sure we do finish on time. You need to personalise your approach. The way I can look at someone and say, Bill, I'm unhappy with your work because blah, 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 is not the way you might want to say it. We have 3 modes of communication when we're personalising it. The verbal, the words you say. There's a vocal code. It's all about the character in your voice. It's about your continuity and what I call colour. The colour in your voice is about your pace, your pitch, your pause and your power. And visually, what do you actually do with your hands? What do you do with your hands, your face and your body when you're actually talking to somebody? This is not body language. Body language is looking at that woman in that picture and saying, oh, what does that mean? It's not about working out what it means. It's about you making sure that you give it your best shot. So I've documented 11 essential visual communication skills, and they're really, really important when you're telling someone who doesn't pull their weight to lift their game. You often only get one shot at it, and you better get it right. So this is the group we looked at, a group of people who don't pull their weight, and these are the strategies, the 3 steps you go through: nailing the violation, tailoring those strategies, and then personalising how you're going to deliver what you need to deliver to these people. One of those strategies is avoid them, is rising above it, leaving them to it. If you want to go down that path, so be it. But really, you do. If people aren't pulling their weight, you really do need to step up to the plate and make sure that they are pulling their weight. That was me. I'd rushed through it maybe quicker than I would have normally done, Kim, but I do know that people are busy. I do know that people are having lunch and they've got a cup of tea or whatever with them. So I've rushed through that fairly quickly, but I feel as though there are some questions. Is that right?
Okay. Yes, I've got them. I don't worry about how I did it.
I raced through that, and there's an awful lot in that, from real life scenarios to how you actually practice your skills. Yeah. But I'm also well aware that people are busy, so I didn't want to give an 8-hour lecture, and it's not a workshop. So I rush to that quickly. At least people have got an idea now that one of the things I want to leave people with is it doesn't matter what type it is. Don't get wrapped up in that. You can deal with all of these people by these 3 steps of nailing the violation. What have they done wrong? They swore. We have a rule in our office that says you're not allowed to swear. That's it. It doesn't matter whether it be swearing, blaspheming. Yeah. So what are the questions?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Questions and comments. So Jonathan Crimes said, what did he say?
He's a troublemaker, that Jonathan.
I can't, because I've had to do it work. Oh, he said clarity is kind. That's right. Yeah. They call me the workaround king. So we had this technical problem, but I really wanted to get these comments and questions sorted out and shared them with Mark. So that's what he said. Clarity is kind.
Yeah.
Then we have Mark Shaw, and Mark has said, totally agree. Identify the problem and the facts that support the problem, then gain agreement to solve the problem. Makes perfect sense to me. Any response there, Mark?
Look, well, that's the ideal. Here's an example I've often given at presentations. I had someone who, a little bit different to not pulling their weight, but I had someone who lied on their timesheet, the old days when you actually had to write on a timesheet. And I did that. Look, we've got a problem here. This is what I've seen. You came to work at 9:30, but you wrote down 9. Here's the problem with that, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, is there something I need to know? And I was expecting them to say, oh, yes, look, my wife's ill and I've had trouble getting to work on time or something. So that was what I was expecting. That's the ideal for me. I was going to get an agreement. Yes, sorry, mate, it won't happen again. That was it. It would have been done. But they went on to some sort of thing about, I work really hard and why don't you pick on such and such? Why are you picking on me? So agreement is always the best and it's worth a go. But sometimes you do need to say, well, and I'll use the person's name, I'm sorry, Michael, that might be true. We're talking about you at the moment. And what I want you to do from now on is make sure that your timesheet is 100% accurate from now on because, and then I went through the fewer technique. So I agree. If you get agreement with people, fantastic. And look, I had someone who was a maverick, who was off doing all sorts of other things, and talking to them about, they actually said to me when I asked them, look, is there something I need to know? I said, oh, I thought we were allowed a certain amount of carte blanche to do whatever, other things. I think they were sincere. I think they actually believed that. And I said, no, what I want you to do is to do and it was fixed overnight, like done. That's what they told me. So that's a great news story for me, but I agree. I agree if you can get agreement.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. Christine Matheson Green from New Zealand, is that right? Don't crucify me if I get it wrong.
We will.
She said, and we're here. Just a comment.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Now,
yes,
sorry?
No, go on. Please go on.
Adil Rizvi.
Yes.
Said, great tips here, Mark McPherson. Philip Kumar Yadhavan. Sounding terrible here.
You're not doing a great job, sorry, Kim. But I'm glad you're doing it, not me.
It's difficult for an Anglo like me. He said, nice tips with 2 exclamation marks. I love it when it goes to 2. One is not enough.
This is Elaine out of Seinfeld with the exclamation marks, if everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Andre Hoffman, we both know Andre.
Oh, Andre, yes.
Yes, and he says, we want to know more. And there's... Okay.
My guess is... I was just going to say, Kim, go on.
I just finished this part. There are 2... okay. All right, Deborah, No, they haven't. There's two that are still missing from my, because we're using like an intermediary software. So it's called StreamYard.
Okay.
And I got bumped out, all right. And then when I came back, the comments that were there previously had disappeared. So if you're still on the call, I know one of you was asking a question, and it was a pretty good question. So I'd really like to see that question again. But now I've got a few more fresh ones that are showing up. So a LinkedIn user said clarity is kind. Christine has come back and said, Christine Matheson Green, she said, I have a team member and shareholder, so they're not staff, and mine is not a big organisation. It's a startup. But this person is very talented but chaotic. So difficult to pin down to real timelines. Any thoughts there, Mark?
Look, this is what I love about these sorts of questions, because what I find when I've given workshops is that people will send you a message 2 days or 3 days later and say, I have this person. So I love these sorts of questions. The question that I can be quite tough on people when I'm face-to-face, when I'm dealing with clients. So my first question is, so they're chaotic, so what? Now that sounds brutal, but what I mean by that is, so what is the violation? What is it about them that what have they actually done? What standard of behaviour is it? Now, when you say chaotic, I want to be really clear about that. I want to know what the facts are. Well, this is me just off the top of my head. Well, Mark, they come into the meeting late and they put things down. They do this and do that. Well, okay, there's 5 violations there. You don't come to meetings late. That's the first thing. So you have to say to people, when you come to meetings late, that disrupts us because blah, blah, blah. So you're working out that violation is vital here, because you cannot do anything unless you know what it is. Otherwise, they'll just say, oh, she's just going off at me for no particular reason. And I've seen people walk out of meetings and I've said, what actually happened? I don't know, she went on about something or other about me being disrespectful and chaotic or whatever. So I just say, fine, it's all over. So working out what this person actually does and what the rules are. If there are no rules and there are no standards of behaviour, then you're in trouble, because you cannot pin people down. But that's the first thing. What is it exactly I expect from people? What are the expectations in this office or in this startup or in this meeting or this community group? And then when people violate, you say, we have a rule or an expectation that people will, whatever it happens to be. So I'm happy to have a private talk with anyone about this, but that's really where you have to start. As I said, I've worked for a union. And I got people off the hook. That sounds a terrible expression, because people did not know what the violation was. Oh, they're not a team player. I go, yeah, so you say. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's very good. Christine has come back and said, Mark, facts are that emails are missed and deadlines not achieved. 12,000 emails in their inbox. I offered to help and clean up, but no go.
Okay, you've tried the nice time. I think it's, if you have no power over someone, by the way, you're in trouble here. That's something under personalise your approach I didn't discuss. But if the neighbour is being noisy and you don't like it, and there's no law in our society to say they can't be noisy, you can ring the police or do whatever you like, but you have no power. So that's one thing. Sometimes we have no power over someone. You just can't walk up to someone in the park and say you're littering and you should, well, you can say that, but they can just say go away. So, but if you've identified the problem, then it is time, I think. I love the FEWER technique because it's the ultimate assertiveness tool to me. But if this person has broken what you consider to be a standard behaviour, I have sent you an email 3 times. I sent it at 12 noon on whatever it happens to be. I believe it would have been in your box by the end of that day. You have not responded. That is a problem, because in this organisation we need to get things moving. We have deadlines, whatever it happens to be. But I think it's a time to speak to that person and say, there's an expectation in this organisation that these things happen, and it has not happened. I've dealt with people who come to meetings and have not read what they're supposed to have read. Now, it wasn't spelled out that you're supposed to read it. It was understood. But you've got to confront these people head on. And when I say that, just be careful, because there are some visual communication skills you need to use when you're talking about these things. So I'm happy to talk about that some other time. But look, if you've identified the violation, you now have to act or let it go.
That's right. I'm glad you mentioned the visual communication skills. That's another important aspect of this.
It is, when you are dealing with some of these things, Kim, it is actually vital. You know, the way in which you point to something, how long you look at it for, vital.
Exactly. Christine, thanks, Christine. Christine is from Hobart, not from New Zealand. Sorry about that.
Of course, yes.
Susan Smith, she said, I don't believe in separating or isolating team members from their colleagues. Your thoughts on that comment?
I didn't isolate people. I had two people who were sitting next to each other and they didn't get on, and they were being quite disruptive, and I asked them to move, and I can't tell you the organisation, but I got them to move. Now, out of 18 staff, it's really who decides where people sit. Well, I moved them. They weren't isolated from anyone else. They just weren't sitting next to each other. I'm going to tell you something extra. These people had an affair once. So I'm going to tell you a bit extra about them. And once I found that wasn't the issue. The issue was their behaviour was always, you know, oh, you're talking too loud on the phone. They were childish. I moved them. I just moved them. I did not treat them any differently after that. This is important. You don't hold grudges. I just said, look, this is not working out the way you're sitting. There's too much disruption here. Yesterday this happened, I'm going to separate you. Now, someone actually said to me, why do I have to, the guy actually said, why do I have to move? Why not her? And I said, I'm moving both of you.
Yeah, that makes
I'm sorry,
sense.
Look, I agree with whoever asked that question. It's terrible to have to do this. But I'm running 18 staff. There's a lot of money going through this department. I can't afford other people to be disrupted and the work disrupted by two people of being silly. Yes, I moved them. Not everyone's cup of tea, that strategy. That's just an example.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Now, Mark, before we close, just perhaps we could just have a quick word about, or you could have a quick word about the value of becoming proficient at dealing with difficult people and mastering tough conversations. People like Tim Ferriss has said it's probably the most valuable skill you can ever learn because it will benefit you many different areas of your life. So, Mark, comments on that.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree, and I won't lie to you. I've not always been good at this myself. I look back at my career and I think I should have done this. It would have been better if I've done that. When you step up to positions of management or somewhere in the organisation, people above you notice. They notice, oh, gee, Julie's really got that team working well. They were a bit sloppy before that, but she's stepped in and she's got everyone working from the same hymn sheet or whatever the expression is. So people really notice it. So I used to think it was just for your own stress and your own feeling of self-worth. That's my thing. I used to think it was for your own feeling of self-worth and your own stress that you'd get on top of these issues. But one thing I've noticed over the last decade is how often those above us notice how good or the way in which we handle these situations. They notice it. It's a promotion game. It's a career path thing.
Definitely, and I think that it makes people more attractive to future employers outside of their current, situation.
And look,
more valuable in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I don't want to overemphasise being harsh on people. I mean, I honestly believe prevention is better than cure. If you can get, it's a horrible noise. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's a continual noise.
Yeah, sorry about that.
If you can get people working together, and this is why I'm interested in something else called best practice behaviour. If you can get people working together first without having to step in and get people to behave, it's simply so much better. So, but people above notice, when you take over a job, people don't just want you to be good at the job you are doing. They want you to be good at managing people. And ideally, you do it in such a way that people agree and move on together.
Yes. Great point there, Mark. Susan has responded again. She say, "Ooh la la." Yes. Remove the toxicity from the team. Remove the toxicity from the team.
I might say these people started to be. This is a good story. When I moved those people, it changed their life. It changed my life. They just settled down.
Yeah.
I just changed it. It's funny, but that's just a particular story. When you change the physical environment, there's lots of things you can do.
Yes. Okay. Now, any further questions or comments before we close off? From you, Mark, or from the people who are on?
Well, only that I'm aware that when we do these things, Kim, we're just touching the surface. The best thing that I used to love running workshops, and I'm happy to run those, but when you work with someone one-on-one and you get their real life scenario and you can work with them, it's very rewarding for all involved. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Kim, for organising it. It's appreciated.